you're here to see me, I'm going to start talking. So I want to begin. We're a minute away from starting, so I'll begin with just something that happens, a little story that happens at all of the Seders that I've ever been to with my father. My father starts off every Seder by the same joke. I don't know if that's a job for grandfathers to start off the same joke every year. Now that I'm a grandfather, so I have to start with like the same joke every year. Maybe I take my father's, but this is actually not a joke, a real story that the first time my father had his in-laws, my grandparents, was at the Seder night. A little bit awkward to have your first time you meet your in-laws is the Seder night. And sure enough, there were around 6 people at the Seder, and my grandmother brought out 5 huge matzo balls and put it in the middle of the table. It was like soggy matzo balls. And my father never saw this before. People were fighting over the matzo balls, grabbing it with their hands, pulling, yelling, cursing. And my father said he was embarrassed to be a part of this family, but the 3 that he had were delicious.
Okay.
That's good.
All right. So I want to start off by telling you about one of the great unsung heroes in Olympic history. You've probably heard of Mark Spitz, the greatest Jewish athlete of all time. Maybe Sandy Koufax, but Mark Spitz, the great Olympian. Jesse Owens. But I'm going to tell you a story about a guy named Steve Bradbury that I don't know if any of you have ever heard, because Steve Bradbury was the first Australian to win a gold medal. And you're thinking, Australian gold medal? I know that they swim. I know they play lots of Australian Leagues football, but what did he win at? So he did not only compete in the Olympics, but he won a gold medal in speed skating. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen speed skating, but you go indoors, you go in a circle around and around and around, and it's 5 people in a race, just like you have a 100-yard dash, but it's around 1,000 meters, so you go around in the circle. Can you imagine how tiny the circle is? Because you got to go around, and they're speed skaters. So you go around 8 times, and the winner is the winner, and that's how it works. And it takes around 90 seconds to do that, so I don't know if it's 1,000 meters or 1,500 meters. And this guy wanted to win a gold medal for Australia really badly, and he was already 30 years old, which in speed skating, I guess, is really old because this was his 3rd Olympics. In one Olympics, he smashed himself up, and he actually needed a halo. But there he is trying to win an Olympic medal, a Winter Olympic medal. The Olympics are something that we used to have before COVID-19. COVID-19, that's where all athletes got together. Okay. So in the second to last heat to determine who was going to be in the final, there's only 5 people in the final race. They have gold, silver, and bronze, and then 2 losers. He didn't want just the bronze. He wanted to win the gold, to be the first Australian ever to win. In the semifinals, I guess there are lots of semifinals, right at the end of the race, 2 people in front of him were disqualified, and he was in 4th place, so he got into 2nd place, so he got in the final. Okay, so here he's in the finals, and the other 4 people in the finals, I'm not a big speed skating follower. Anyone here a speed skating follower? So I see one hand. Oh, that's my hand. Okay, so trust me when I tell you that all the other people that were in the speed skating final race already had won championships in the Olympics beforehand, or in what they do every year. We don't follow. Every year there's a big competition, World Championship, I think it's called. And the race starts, and Steve Bradbury is in last place by like 3 seconds, so like a lot of space. And they're coming into the last turn. It's a 90-second race, and they're coming into their last turn with only like 5 seconds to go. And with 5 seconds to go, they start jockeying because the 4 were really crushed together, and each one, every inch decides the winner. And lo and behold, kaplooey, all 4 fall down, and Steve, who's in the last place, goes across the finish line. You can Google this. Wins, and he wins the gold medal. And for the first time in Olympic history, an Australian there for the Winter Olympics stands up and they sing whatever song they sing, and you guess he has a Forster beer. He actually wrote a book about this called The Last Man Standing. And they interviewed him and they said, Steve, what was your strategy going into the finals? It worked out, but like, how did you win? What was your strategy? He said, listen, I'm 30 years old. I've had a million knee operations. I had stitches here and this there, and I wore that halo. And I knew the only way I could win is if I stayed back and then hope everyone banged into each other and fell. And remarkably, everyone falls down in this race, all the gold medalists, and he comes in for the victory. Why am I saying this? Is that I think we all can agree that if you stick around, in the game of life, if you just stick around, then you'll wind up winning the race. And everyone's acting, not everyone, not me, everyone's acting like the sky is falling. And yes, it's a lot of bad news going around. And what are we going to do this Pesach? You know what? You're going to have Pesach either by yourself or with one person or with 5 people. Just today, they announced that you can't have restaurants going on. We actually had a policeman come to our house and he accused Rivki. He said, you're only allowed to do takeout. He accused Rivki of having a restaurant in the house. And Rivki said, no, these are just our kids. This is just our kids over here. So life is going to happen. We're going to have Pesach next year. This Pesach's going to be difficult for everyone. But is it really going to be difficult? I mean, life hands you a weird Pesach, and you handle it. I mean, oh my gosh, I want to have Pesach the way I want it to. So just be Steve Bradbury. Just stick around. Just stay healthy. Because next year you'll be able to discuss Pesach Corona, and you'll talk about it. And all the other Pesachs in the past, you'll be like, they're all a blur. And this Pesach will be special, even if you're celebrating Pesach by yourself. This is life. Just be Steve Bradbury. Just stick around, because if you stick around, you win. And if you give up, you don't win. I can tell you my grandfather, after the Holocaust, I actually have to thank this rabbi, because after the Holocaust, he was in a work camp. He wasn't my grandpa, Sarah, he wasn't, by the way, he wasn't a sour person. That was just his last name, Sour. And he came back to his hometown to see who survived. And lo and behold, there were 2 Jews that survived that he met from Sumbate, his hometown. A young lady who ended up being his wife, Grandma Sour, and the rabbi. And he told the rabbi when he came back that he doesn't want to be Jewish anymore. So the rabbi told my grandfather, I'll tell you what, Tibby, that was his name. He says, don't be Jewish for a week, and then come back and tell me, what your experiences are. So sure enough, a week goes by, and my grandfather comes back to the rabbi and says, I tried to live like a non-Jew, and I just can't. It doesn't work for me. So I always think that this rabbi, with his great wisdom, he actually told my grandfather, be a non-Jew, live like a non-Jew, but come back to me and tell me how you feel about it. Giving my grandfather the space allowed him to come back to Judaism on his own terms, and not through guilt, but through love. And so life is full of twists and turns, and if we just stick around, we wind up winning the game in life. So I look at my grandfather, and then I look at his brother, who, and rightly so, no one can question, but after the Holocaust, he gave up. He actually changed his last name from Sauer to Simpson, and he actually, believe it or not, he owned a white Bronco, and we were really nervous when we got a phone call that the police are chasing a guy named Simpson in a white Bronco down the LA freeway. We thought that was our great uncle, but it was another Simpson, not related at all to my knowledge. So we're going to be Steve Bradbury. We're going to do our best to have a great Pesach experience, even if it is not the ideal Pesach, because, we're alive and we can have Pesach and the sky is not falling. So let's begin. Let me begin by telling you something that you maybe have never heard of. How many years, and I'm going to unmute you now, how many years were we told we were going to be in Egypt? Anyone know?
400.
What?
400.
400. Do I hear 500? Anyone else? 400? We have another number here. 400, 500. So, so the Torah actually gives, when Abraham was told at the covenant between the parts that he was going to have his children go into Egypt, Sarah's right. Sarah, you get extra herring. when you come back to shul. I know you're a big herring fan. You get extra herring when you come back. In fact, we actually bought 2 tubs of herring, but because we don't have shul for the next 3 months, I actually ate them all and I'm sick. So I'm gonna sue you for something. I don't know what. Okay, so, but 400 years. Now, 400 years is a long time. We were actually not in Egypt for 400 years. It's not true. We weren't in Egypt 400 years. How many years were we in Egypt? Well, God told Abraham we're going to be in Egypt for 400 years, but we weren't in Egypt 400 years. Does anyone know how many years we were actually in Egypt? I muted you. Does anyone know how many years we were actually in Egypt? So the answer is we're in Egypt for 210 years. Isn't that crazy? So 200.
That's what I said.
Okay, but you know, let me tell you something else. I'm gonna mute you all because let me just get this thought across. The truth is that in the Torah, here's the thing: in the Torah, in the book of Shmos, it says we were in Egypt for 430 years. So we have to get our act together. On the one hand, God told Abraham we're going to be in Egypt for 400 years, but then in the book of Shmos, when it's saying, "Hey, we were in Egypt for 430 years," but actually we're only in Egypt for 210 years. And then I tell you something crazy: that the slavery in Egypt, well, the backbreaking slavery, was only 86 years. Yes, you heard it here first. 86 years. That was when Miriam was born. And anyone named Miriam in the group here? So Miriam actually comes from a word at the Seder. Does anyone know what Miriam sounds like? You guessed it, Mara. Now, I wouldn't name my kid Mara, although my first girl is Miriam. I wouldn't name her Mara, but every Pesach, my sons remind my daughter Miriam that Miriam was actually from Mar, from Bitter, because she was 86 years old when she took the Jews out of Egypt with Moshe and Aaron, but the intense backbreaking slavery started at her birth. So her parents gave her a very tough name, which is now obviously a very beautiful name. And we were in Egypt. We were enslaved for 210 years. Well, no, we were in Egypt for 210. We were actually only enslaved for 86. So how do all these numbers make up? Let's review. We have 4 numbers here. We have 430, 400, 210, and 86. So let's deal with the 400 and the 430. When Abraham was born, Abraham was told, you're going to be strangers in a land. You're going to be going down to Egypt. Till we actually left Egypt was 430 years. That's how many years it was from Abraham all the way to when we left Egypt. So where do you get this 400 years? It was 430 years. So Yitzchak was born 30 years after that guarantee. So if you want to know 400 years, now if you were told you're going to go into Egypt, when would you start feeling really bad about that? When you're single or when you have your first kid? Because when you're single and you're told your kids are going to be enslaved in Egypt for 400 years, you feel bad, but you're not a father yet. You're not a mother yet. So how bad can you feel? Because you don't really look. I'll tell you, I loved my parents my whole life. Please tell them I said that. But I loved my parents my whole life. But you know when I really started loving my parents? When I became a father myself. Because when I became a father, that's when it dawned on me how much my parents loved me. And when I was a teenager, my mother would say, Ellie, I love you. And I'd say, I also love you. And she would say, no, I love you more. I'd be like, Ma, I love you the same as you love me. So she's like, no, you don't. It's impossible. I love you so much more. I'm like, if you love me so much more, then give me a bigger allowance. Okay, I don't know if I said that or I should have said that. But I started loving my parents, appreciating their love for me only when I became a parent myself. So when God told Abraham, you're going to be enslaved you're going to be in Egypt for 400 years, it only hit Abraham, the feeling of this is really awful, only when Yitzchak was born. So it's 430 years from when God told Abraham, 430 years, but it's 400 years when Abraham started to feel the pain. That's one idea. But I'll tell you another idea. Can anyone tell me how old Yosef was? How old was Yosef when he became second to the king? Anyone?
190.
How old was Yosef when he became second to the king? Anyone? Anyone want to take a guess?
190.
It's a 2-digit answer.
Oh, 2.
Too high or lower? Does anyone want to try with the number?
18.
18 higher.
30.
30. What did you say? 10? No, he was 30 years old.
Hey, that was me.
Okay, that's correct. A 3 large hats. That's what you want. 3 large hats. Okay, so now let's do our math again. According to the mystics, the truth is the Jewish people were supposed to go out 400 years after Abraham was told. Nothing to do with when Yitzhak was born. The Jewish people still go out 400 years, but they were punished an extra 30 years because for 30 years Yosef felt tormented. Only when he became second to the king did he realize that God had a plan. So the Jewish people, the brothers who made Yosef suffer for 30 years, God said, if you're going to make Yosef suffer for 30 years, I'm adding on 30 years. So even though the punishment was supposed to be only for 400 years, God added 30 years for bad behavior. And you know what's interesting? I don't know if you heard about the bones of Ezekiel. I don't know if I heard that famous, the bones, the dry bones. So we're told in the Navi that there was a portion of Jews that left Egypt before God took them out with Moshe. I don't know, does anyone know that? That a portion of Jews left Egypt, they ran away. Do you know that 8 people today ran away from a jail in Washington State? Okay, does anyone waste their time on stupid things like that? Okay, yeah, and I actually saw a video of them running away and the citizens cheering them on. It was really, as an American, it made me cry. I was so proud. So it seems that the Jewish people were being punished an extra 30 years. And there's a group of people that ran out of Egypt 30 years before they were supposed to. And those were the tribe of Ephraim. The dry bones are the tribe of Ephraim. And they ran out 30 years earlier. Now, why did they escape from Egypt 30 years earlier? They wound up all dying in the desert. But why did they run out 30 years earlier? Why didn't they run out 25 years before or 10 years before? Didn't they know that God told Abraham 400 years? Well, yeah, they knew that. And that's why they counted 400 years. And they said, you know what? If our brothers are here for bad behavior another 30 years, that's their problem. But the tribe of Ephraim was from who? The tribe of Ephraim was from Yosef. If the Jews are being stuck in Egypt, not 400 years, 430 years for 30 years of bad treatment to their brother, well, we're from the son of Yosef. We were able to go out now. But they died. You know why? Because even though it was the brother's fault for selling Yosef, Yosef also gossiped on their brother. You know, it takes 2 to tango. The brothers hated Yosef, but Yosef deserved it a little bit because he said bad things about them. It takes 2 to tango. And so that's the story behind the 430 and the 400. For sure, Abraham was told 400 years, but there was an extra 30 years. And our rabbis say the extra 30 years was because of the bad treatment the brothers gave Yosef the first 30 years of his life. Okay, that's idea number 2. I don't know if you heard of Dion Branch. Has anyone ever heard of Dion Branch? I am shocked. No one's heard of Dion Branch. Have you heard of Elvis Presley? Have you heard of Elvis Presley? Okay. Nothing to do with Dion Branch, but I just wanted you to feel good that you knew something. Okay, so Elvis Presley was a singer, and apparently he was Jewish, or he was friendly with the Jewish community. I don't know, something about that. But Dion Branch was not Jewish. But I'm going to tell you something about Dion Branch. Hopefully you'll never forget who Dion Branch is. Dion Branch is 5'9". So I would say that would make him like 5 inches shorter than me. So he's a very short man. He's 5'9". Now, he's not short if he was Jewish, right? Let's be honest. If he's 5'9" Jew, he's in the top 10%. But Dion Branch is not Jewish, and he's a football player. Now I say, well, if he's 5'9" and a football player, he's probably a kicker. Those are the guys that kick the football into the goalpost. That's probably why he's 5'9". But the answer, no, he's not five. He's not a field goal kicker. He's not a punter. He is actually a wide receiver. Now, a wide receiver gets the ball thrown to him, and his job is to catch it. That's all he has to do is catch the ball. Now, if everyone's tall and the ball's in the air, and you have to jump for the ball. Watch me jump. Now, you might not, don't do this at home. Okay, you ready? And you catch the ball. If you're 5'9" and you're competing against guys 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", you're not going to catch the ball. The taller guys are going to go, hey, get out of my way. I'm catching it. So you have to be really, really good to be a wide receiver if you're 5'9". Okay, and hopefully everyone agrees with that statement. And Deion Branch joined a team called the New England Patriots because there's an old England across the pond, and then they made a New England, and that's in America. Just like there's an old York and a New York, there's an old England and a New England, okay? And they have a team called the Patriots, but they only patriotic to the new country, not to the old country. And they have a team, and their team was really good. And they had a very good quarterback. Does anyone know the name of their quarterback? That's right, Tom Brady. Now, Tom Brady spent 20 years on the Patriots, but just as Corona broke, to football fans, that is not as tragic as Tom Brady leaving the Patriots. He mamish left the Patriots, and he joined the team in Tampa Bay. Now, if he was so smart, he should have moved to better weather many, many years ago, but he's not the brightest guy, not the sharpest knife in the drawer. Okay, so he had a player on his team named Deion Branch. Deion Branch is a 5'9" wide receiver, and every year he made the Super Bowl. Now, I don't know why he made the Super Bowl. Well, he was on the right team. He's obviously very talented. You don't get to be, I mean, how many people catch balls and make $10 million a year? So the ball comes when you catch it. There's 40 people in America that get the job of catching the ball, 2 people per team, and they make lots of money. So he's obviously the 40 best catchers in America. And when his team reached the Super Bowl, and his team reached the Super Bowl a lot, so you know what he did? The day of the Super Bowl. Now, if I was in the Super Bowl, I'd be very excited. And my mother would call me and say, Ellie, I love you. And I would say, I love you more. But Ma, it's a football game, I gotta focus. But the day of the game, Deion Branch did something I don't think has ever been done in the history of athletes the day of their Super Bowl, their Stanley Cup, their NBA championship, their chess tournament. I don't know what chess people have for the final game. He called up all of his coaches the day of the Super Bowl. And there's a great article written about one of his coaches when he was 10 years old. It's in the junior, it's called Pop Warner football. He called up his Pop Warner coach. Let's call him Tim. And Tim picks up the phone and says, hi, who is this? And he says, it's Deion Branch. And he says, Deion Branch? He says, come on, I'm being punked. I don't know if you heard of that term. I'm being trapped. This is no way this is Deion Branch. He says, no, coach, it's me. And he describes who he is. He says, it's the Super Bowl in 4 hours. Why are you calling me? He says, I'm calling you because I wouldn't be here if you didn't help me. And he called up every coach, from the head coach of his high school team to the wide receiver coach of his high school team. He called up every coach, and he made that a tradition every year. Now, he made it many times, but the first time he did it, he just wanted to say thank you. Here he is in the moment of his excellence, and he realizes that the only reason why he's here is because of the people that helped him to take that journey. What an amazing guy. I said, Deion Branch, you understand really the message of Pesach. Because my next point is as follows. I don't know if you've ever found the Haggadah boring. Here's the tape. You get through the Manishtanas, you have a lot of kids, you get through the Manishtanas. Now, I came home, I went to an Orthodox day school called RJJ. Anyone here go to RJJ? No one? Okay. RJJ stood for Rabbi Jacob Joseph, the first and only chief rabbi of New York City. New York City had a chief rabbi till they ran him into the ground. And then they never had a chief rabbi since. And my school is named after him, Rabbi Jacob Joseph. In our school, it was known as Rabbi Jesse James, or Rabbinical Jails for Jews. That was the acronym RJJ. And my teachers used to give us tomes. I don't know if your kids came, pages this big of all the different things you should show at the Seder. So I think we started after Sukkot, just working on the Seder night. So Sukkot and then Hanukkah and Purim, and we come home at the Seder night and we have 1,000 pages. My brother had 1,000 pages, my younger brother had 1,000 pages, thousands of pages, and we were ready to go for the Seder. And my mother would say, Ellie, David, Benji, it's amazing, but save this for the next night. Save it for the next night. And I would say, Ma, but it's the second night of the Seder tonight. Save it for the next night. Save it for the next night. So there's so many things. But the truth is that we get to the Seder and we get through the Manashtana, and then we have those 6 pages where we're like, what is this? And we read it, and it seems so like, what is this talking about? This word means this word, and that word means that word. And that's actually the Maggid. I don't know if you know this, but the Haggadah means to tell over. And we only have I like the plagues. I'm a guy. I like war movies. I like plagues. So I'm like blood and frogs, and we have a lot of fun. But that's only like 10 words. Those 6, 7 pages that make up the main part of the Haggadah. Who here goes through slowly? Does anyone go through like the main part of the Haggadah slowly? Does anyone go through it really fast? Maybe over here. I go through that pretty fast. That's the boring part, but it makes no sense because that's the meat and potatoes. Imagine if you had a meal and you had does anyone remember where grapefruit was served at Shabbos lunch meals? I think I had grapefruit for 6 years in a row. I don't know why, but, and cantaloupe. Does anyone still have cantaloupe? I served cantaloupe at my bar mitzvah. Did anyone remember the cantaloupe being a big deal? When's the last time you had cantaloupe at a lunch meal? That's on a Shabbos lunch. Sit down and have that gefilte fish and break into that cantaloupe. Oh, those were the glory days. Maybe with Corona, we're going to have to go back to cantaloupe. We'll see. But I digress a little bit. But here you have, what was I talking about? Does anyone remember what I was talking about? Let's unmute all here. What was I talking about? Anyone?
The Maggid.
Cantaloupe. Thank you. Okay, here we go. So the Maggid. But I'll tell you, because if I was writing the Haggadah, I would write the Haggadah of the action scenes, of blood and frogs and lice. I would write the Haggadah about that. But the main part of the Haggadah is not the action scenes that we read in the book of Exodus. The main part of the Haggadah is, you're not going to believe me, but it's true. I don't lie unless I can get away with it. Then I'm not going to get away with this one, so I'm going to tell you the truth. The main part of the Haggadah is from the book of Dvarim, where the farmer goes to Jerusalem and he brings his first fruit. One of the 613 commandments is bring your first fruit to Jerusalem. By the way, did anyone this is nothing to do with anything, but is anyone really excited that they said LCBO and cannabis is an essential thing to buy in Toronto? Did anyone read that? Isn't that amazing? Can't go to the dentist for a root canal, but the LCBO and cannabis is still, thank God, we have our priorities straight in Toronto. Thank God. So proud of that. I know, Jeff, you're very proud of that as well. Okay, I just thought, how amazing is it that we have our priorities straight? Okay, so we read the farmer goes and he gives his first fruit to Jerusalem. Very nice. When you make your first buck, you want to frame it. But a Jew makes his first fruit and he brings it to Jerusalem and gives it to the Kohen, gives it to God, and he makes a thank you statement. And the thank you statement the farmer says is, thank you for taking me out of Egypt. And he has around 6 lines that he says. And anytime, if we lived in temple times, you'd be saying this 6-line paragraph to the Kohen. So the rabbi who wrote the Haggadah said, I'm going to take these 6 lines, and this is going to be the main part of the Haggadah. And I'm thinking, that's boring. But the truth is that there's a profound message, because the farmer is exercising the most important quality that Dion Branch got, which is the quality of saying thank you and appreciation. And so Dion Branch said thank you, and this farmer says thank you. And if we're going to have a Haggadah experience, it can't just be God gave blood and he gave frogs and he gave lice. We're actually going to take a moment to say, we'd like to be like the farmer. We'd like to say thank you. And so you might be having Seder all alone. You might be having Seder with just one person. But every Seder, especially this Seder, is the Seder where we have to really say thank you. So whether you read those 6 pages or not, I think that's very important to read and to learn as much as you can. But to stop in the Seder and to say to whoever's there, even if it's to yourself, thank you. I think it'd be pretty neat if my kids were at a Seder and they heard me say, thank you to my wide receiver coach. Well, not my wide receiver coach, but thank you to my fifth grade rabbi. And thank you to my neighbor. Thank you to all my father's friends that treated me like an adult when I was growing up. And just start listing 20 thank yous. And it's not for them, it's for us. But the Seder is a night of saying thank you. You know, that's idea number two. Is you have Steve Bradbury, you have the numbers, that's idea number two. And then you have this idea of the Seder is all about saying thank you. Now, I've never been in Egypt. Has anyone ever gone to Egypt? Dahab, come on, some honest answers here, thank you. I've never been to Egypt, but I'll tell you that my ancestors and your ancestors went to Egypt. And on the Seder night in Egypt, they were told to slaughter the Paschal lamb, right? Does everyone know the Paschal lamb is supposed to slaughter the Paschal lamb? Now, they actually held on to this Paschal lamb for a couple of days before they slaughtered it. So the Shabbos before they slaughtered the Paschal lamb, which was the Wednesday night, which was Thursday. You want to know what day of the week was the original Passover? That was Wednesday night. But Saturday on Shabbos, the Jews were told, take the lamb and tie it to the bedpost. Now, truth is, as a kid, I was always too embarrassed to ask what a bedpost was, but it actually just means a bed with the leg. That's a bedpost. Why don't they just say the leg of the bed? Why do they have to do this fancy language? Bedpost. 30 years they're tying to the bedpost. I never knew what a bedpost was. So they tied the lamb to the bedpost. Now in the Torah it says that you can take a lamb. Does anyone know where a lamb comes from? A lamb comes from a sheep. Does everyone know that? Be honest. I don't know if everyone knew that. You can take a lamb or you can take a kid. Now, does anyone know where a kid comes from? The kid comes from a goat. So the Torah actually says you can take a lamb. It calls it a seh in Hebrew, and a seh is a lamb or a goat. You can take whatever you want. And you'll say, oh, that's weird. I never heard of a Paschal goat before. No, the Torah allows it. You can take a lamb or you can take a kid or a lamb, which is a goat or a sheep. You can take whatever you want. You can take a kid or you can take a lamb. Now, I've never heard of a Paschal goat before, but I'll tell you something, that when Yaakov went into Yitzchak with his fur coat to pretend that he's Esav, his mother told him, hey, get and slaughter 2 goats. They don't say two lambs, 2 goats. And if you look at Rashi there, it says, oh, the 2 goats. One is for the festival offering and one is for the Paschal offering. So we actually have Rashi telling us that goats are allowed. In fact, the Talmud says goats are allowed. And God told Moshe they should take a seh, some sin hay, take a seh. Now, if I had to choose between a goat or a sheep, a kid or a lamb, and I was in Egypt, does anyone know what year Egypt was in Jewish? Does anyone know? Here for some more money here. I'm going to give out some money here right now. I'm going to throw out a number. Does anyone want to be courageous and say what year did we leave Egypt? I'll give you a hint. It's between 0 and 5,780.
800.
800. Higher. Remember Card Sharks? Remember that game show, Card Sharks? Higher, lower? Higher than 800. Anyone else? You're all muted. Hello, anyone else want to say a number?
1,500.
1,500. Higher.
It's 3,200.
That's ridiculous. Lower.
2,500.
That's 2,500.
Or,
25 or 30.
Amazing, but I saw you Googling it, so no good.
Five.
oh, I didn't
Oh,
Google
come
it.
on, you did. Don't lie. Don't lie to your rabbi. Okay. The answer is 2448. So we were in Egypt in the year 2448. That's the year we got out. Easy to remember because 24 plus 24 is 48. So God made it really easy for you to remember. 2448, that's the year that we got out of Egypt. And if I was in Egypt back then, 3,300 years ago, and Moshe said, hey, you can take a lamb or a kid, I'll tell you what I would be taking. I'd be taking a kid because the Mitzrayim worship as their main god. This is they worship the Nile River, they worship frogs, they worship animals, they worship the sun. They worshiped firstborns, but the main thing they worshiped was the lamb. So if I had to choose between taking a lamb or taking a kid, I would go for the kid because I'm not a brave hero. But all the Jews in Egypt, no one took a goat. You never heard such a thing as a paschal goat. You heard it from a paschal lamb. Because the Jews at that moment said that if we're going to be the Jewish people, we have to go for it. We have to do the thing that Hashem wants us to do. And in life, Hashem many times gives you two good things to choose from. And he says, you can do that or you can do that. And deep down, you know, just like when the parent says, you know what, you can stay home and clean or you can come with us and visit Bubby and Zadie. Now, what do the parents want? They want you to clean or they want you to go visit your Bubby and Zadie with them, for crying out loud. You know what they want, but you have two kosher options, but you have to know deep down what Hashem wants. And even though Hashem allowed a kid to be brought, we're not going that way. We're going for the home run. We're going for the touchdown. And in life, that's what makes us great. It's not settling for something that's good enough. I don't know, has anyone listened to Buffalo radio here? Anyone know Celino and Barnes? Celino and Barnes, the injury attorneys, called something, 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 something. And you know, Celino and Barnes don't even get along. Do you know that? They're always in fights with each other. That's why they gotta go to Diamond and Brothers to figure out their fight between Celino and Barnes. But they had an advertisement that I love. Now, why would I be listening to Buffalo radio? I don't know. I'm a weird guy. I don't know what to say. But because it's the 550, that's where you get the Buffalo Bills name. Okay, you got me. They had an advertising campaign that said, "Good enough is not good enough at Celino and Barnes." And I said, well, how profound is that? Good enough isn't good enough. Yeah, Paschal kid is good, but it's not good enough. And so next idea is that even though the Paschal kid was allowed, we have to go above and beyond and take the Paschal lamb because we know that's ultimately what Hashem wanted. We know that that's what the Egyptians probably was so angry. You're taking our God? Imagine if you took the Paschal kid. The Egyptians was like, hey, great, gesundheit. Take the Paschal kid. We don't care. But we knew what God wanted. And so God gave us that option. And fascinatingly enough, God gave us the option. And we said, you know, even though we have the option, even though Yaakov brought Yitzchak Paschal kids, we know what God wants. We know he wants us to take the Paschal lamb. Okay. Now, I don't know if anyone's ever heard this question, but why do good things happen to bad people, right? And why do bad things happen to good people? Has anyone ever heard that question? So I'm going to tell you the answer to that question, but first you have to send me $1,000. And then you go to my other websites with the great Jimmy Swaggart and Jim and Tammy Faye Baker, and then I will tell you. But the truth is, I don't know the answer to that question. In fact, Moshe asked God that very question, and it's something that's very mysterious. And so I cannot tell you why the Holocaust happened. I cannot tell you why Corona is happening. Everyone wants to tell you this and that, who knows? I mean, I know why the Jets are a bad football team, because we don't have talent. That's why we're a bad football team. But I do not know. But I'll tell you what, I can't ever discuss why the Holocaust happened, but do we feel we can at least talk about why the Egyptian Holocaust took place? I mean, let's think about it. What I'm telling you is correct, that we were enslaved hard for 86 years. Now, you thought, as Sarah Perlis said, that we were enslaved for 400 years, but now you're hearing it's even 430 years, which is amazing. But keeping the number of 400, even if we were going to be enslaved for 400 years, we really only did hard time for 86 years. I know, don't get me wrong, 86 years is a long time. But if you heard 400 and you only have a hard time for 86 years, that's relatively, that's not so bad. In fact, does anyone know the math there? 86 into 400 is? Yes, you got it. It's 1/5. So we actually had 4/5, which were pretty good, and 1/5 was difficult. And so to me, when I'm having my 4 cups of wine, I'm having each time. Oh, do you know how to say cup in Hebrew? Cup. Yeah, that's how you say cup in Hebrew. Cup. But you also say cup in Hebrew, kos, right? Now, does anyone know how to spell kos? Chaf, vav, samach. That's how you spell kos. Now, we know in Hebrew, everything has a numerical value. So what is the numerical value of chaf? That is 20. Vav, that is 6. I'm not so good at sign language. And samach, that's 60. So 20 plus 6 plus 60 is 86. Hold on a second, Rabbi. You just told me that 86 years was the hard labor they were in. That's correct. And so when I have my 4 cups of wine, I say, God, thank you, because there are 486 years that I didn't have any hard punishment. But there was 1 cup which I don't drink. You know what cup I don't drink? The 5th cup, the cup of Eliyahu. Well, even though that's my name. I don't drink that cup because what I'm doing is I'm saying, God, I'm toasting you 4 times for the first 4 times 86 years I wasn't punished, but only the last 86 years that I did hard time, and now I'm not going to drink that. So that is a mystical idea into the cups. But why did the Egyptian Holocaust have to take place? Now, the truth is that it's a very provocative word, the Egyptian Holocaust. But and I don't know how many Jews died, but presumably all the firstborn boys were dying for years and years and years, and everyone was dying left and right. So to say it's a Holocaust, how can you call it an Egyptian Holocaust? There's only one Holocaust. I apologize, but it was 86 years of them killing us. That's a long time. Okay, why did we go into Egypt? Does anyone know why we went into Egypt? Because if you say, well, why did God do the Holocaust? Does anyone ask, why did God do Egypt? Well, it just sort of happened. I don't know. I was walking down to Egypt and I wound up in slavery. Well, you wouldn't, if anyone said that answer to the Holocaust, you would say, don't get me wrong, there is a reason for the Holocaust. Because if there's no reason, then God just acts arbitrarily, and that would be awful. God doesn't act arbitrarily. There is a reason. I just don't know the reason. And I think that most people that say they know the reason don't know the reason. There's no reason. There is a reason, but we don't know the reason. Okay? So why did Egypt take place? And why were we so the rabbis say there's something in Hebrew called Kor Har Barzel. I don't know if you ever heard of that expression, Kor Har Barzel. I'm not exactly sure how to translate it, but when you take all of the impurities out of metal, does anyone want to help me with the word there? Hold on, unmute all.
Because David was under the impression.
Does anyone know how to say Kor Har Barzel in Hebrew? Smoke, is that the word? Smoke? Anyone? When you get the impurities out of gold. There's an English word.
Dross.
What? Dross. Who said dross?
I did.
Who's I? Who's I? Does anyone acknowledge who I is? Thank you, dross, right? So if you get the dross out, so thank you. So
Right, but
so if you get the dross out, so everything's good, right? So God wanted to get the dross out of the Jewish people by sending them to Egypt. That's a good reason. So we went into Egypt so God can make us better. Well, first of all, did that really work? Our rabbis tell us we were like almost Egyptian-esque. We were on the 49th level. And God sort of said, hey, you got to leave now or else you guys are going to be basically Egyptians. So, but why did God bring us in to Egypt? It's a fascinating question why God brought us into Egypt. And we actually have an answer to that question. The Talmud actually asked this question. Why did God take us into Egypt? So I know no one ever thinks about that at the Seder, but as a kid, I always wondered, like, Moshe didn't hit the Nile River because the Nile River saved him. Remember, he's in the bucket. But didn't the Nile River almost kill him? So, one time I was going to a wedding and I fell asleep at the wheel just for half a second. And I woke up and there was a car right in front of me and I slammed the brakes. And I was listening to my rabbi on cassette. Remember the cassettes when they would go out, you had to put the pencil in it and go, woo! I was listening to a cassette of my rabbi, Rabbi Wine. And I went to my friend, I said, in the merit of me listening to Rabbi Wine, I was able to slam the brakes. To which my friend replied, well, if you listen to Rabbi Wine, he's probably the person that put you to sleep in the first place. So anyway, don't tell Rabbi Wine, that's a cassette, excellent. So, we wound up in Egypt. Why? So here is what the Talmud says. The Talmud says that when God told Abraham, you're going to freak out because this answer seems really wimpy. When God told Abraham he's going to take the Jewish people and bring them down to, that Sarah said, the covenant of the parts or between the parts. When God told Abraham, I'm going to take the Jewish people out of Israel, Abram said, how will I know? Now, I know when you're thinking, how will I know? You're thinking of the song, how will I know if she really loves me? But that is not the how I know I'm referring to. I'm referring to the original, how shall I know, that Abraham told Hashem. How will I know? Now, when you tell your kid something, you're going to get this prize. And your kid can say, well, how will I know? Because your kid knows that you're forgetful, and you're probably just saying that, and he or she wants proof. But if God told you something, you don't go to God and say, how will I know? So God said, if you're asking, how will I know? That means, you know the difference between 99% faith and 100% faith? So you say, Rabbi, do math. The difference between 100% faith and 99% faith is 1%. No, come on, we know. It's like when someone says, did you make the deal with that guy? Did you do the business deal? And you say, that deal's 99% done. And the other percent? Well, that's 50-50, right? We know that unless it's 100% done, it's not done. We know that. So if faith is 99%, we know what 99% faith is. It means when the going gets tough, you get going. The difference between 99% faith and 100% faith is 100%. It's either you have it or you don't. And God said, Abram, if you're asking me, how will I know? That means you're only at 99% faith. And 99% faith, that's like zero. So you know what you got to do? You got to go into Egypt. Now, all the Jews went into Egypt, and a lot of Jews died. But if the Jewish people are one nation, we can say, hey, how is it possible that we survived Hitler? How is it possible that we survived Khmelnytsky? You know what's shocking here? We have like 20 people here. I don't know how many of you have even heard of Khmelnytsky. Khmelnytsky went through Europe, that wicked man, and he killed, I don't know, a half of European Jewry with his hands, not even with machines. The destruction that he did. And we've gone through so many tumultuous times. You pick a country, I'll tell you the program that it happened in, right? That's it, that's our story, so many, and yet we've survived. I'm not gonna sing I Will Survive, I'll wait for the next class to sing I Will Survive. But because we went into Egypt, and because we were so down and out, and we held on to things, God say, if you can make it there, as Frank Sinatra said, if you can make it there in Egypt and still have a level of faith, then you can make it everywhere. And so just like when I was, I don't know if you've ever had the displeasure of taking your kid to get their shots. I try to stay out of anything to do with my kids. That's why my kids are great, because Ricky handled everything. I do nothing. And people say, well, you're a bad father. I said, let me ask you a question. If you can have Michael Jordan teaching you basketball, or Rabbi Karfunkel teaching you basketball, wouldn't Rabbi Karfunkel be smart to say, hey, Michael, teach my kid basketball? So if I'm going to teach my kids how to be good people, should I really be teaching my kids, or should I just give it to Rifki? By me spending 10 minutes more with my kids and having Rifki spend 10 minutes less, I'm doing my kids a disservice. So that's my philosophy. So, but one time I took one of my kids to the doctor to give him shots. And the kid was freaking out. But still today, the kid sees Dr. Ip in shul and runs in the other direction. And I say, but this is important. But you have to take the shot. You have to take the shot. This is good. And I explained to the kid, maybe I shouldn't have done this. Do you know what's in that needle? The disease. The disease is in the needle. Oh, my kid's like, oh, now I get it. Fire away. Rip it up and down the arm. Why did you tell me that, Abba? Well, it's there, and Dr. Ip's giving you the disease, because if you give it to you in a small dose, then if God forbid you ever get it again, so then you'll be able to survive. And that's called an inoculation. And really that's what we want with the coronavirus, and that's what we've been doing. If any, so apologize to any anti-vaxxers there, but that's what basically, I know we have some anti-vaxxers in the group, but basically that's what we do. We inoculate the kid. And so as painful as it is, it's what a kid needs to survive in the world. And that's really the story of Egypt, is that as bad as it was, we're told that all of the different types of challenges we would have, physical challenges like we had in the times of Rome, and spiritual challenges as we had in the times of the Greeks, all the different challenges that we had, all were in the original chulent of the program. The original program of Mitzrayim, the original Holocaust of Mitzrayim, had all the things in it. It had the temptation to assimilate. It had the challenges of being our backs being broken. It had everything. And if we made it out of Egypt, that means we're going to make it out of everything else. You know, it's fascinating that, and with this will end, that, well, I'll end with this story. So there was a great Hasidic rabbi that passed away last year around Holocaust Remembrance Day, the Bluzhever Rebbe. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He passed away. And there's a famous story that they say about him. And if you can say over the story every Seder, just like my father's matzo ball joke, I think you would get the spirit of Pesach in a heartbeat. So after the Holocaust, he survived. And what did he do? I don't know if he was in Auschwitz or another camp. He opened up a matzah factory. I mean, wouldn't you do that if you survived the Holocaust? You would quickly start making matzah. So he did, but he had a rule. His rule was that when he was giving out, you can only get 3 boards of matzah. I don't know, maybe he should have asked for 6 because there's 2 nights. 3 boards of matzah. That's it. And to his pleasant surprise, there were lines and lines down the block, like the same lines I saw at No Frills today at Bathurst and Wilson. Huge lines just to get in. And they were on lines, and everyone's getting 3 matzahs. Well, there was a guy there who wasn't so famous, but he was an assistant to one of the Hasidic masters that survived the Holocaust. And he was having his Seder with the other Hasidic master. So he was getting 3 boards for his family, which is basically the Hasidic master. And he gets up in line and he asks for 6, which was, we'd say, a little grubby, no? Everyone's getting 3 and he's asking for 6. He says, I'd like 6. So the Bluzhever Rebbe didn't want to embarrass him so much. He said, you know, just because you know, you're coming from the Hasidic master, you know, we're all survivors here. Everyone's the same. Yeah. You came in differently maybe, but everyone's the same. You only get 3. So he left, came back, stayed online. He said, no, my rabbi wants 6. So he wasn't going to make a scene. So he gave him 6 boards of matzah. Okay, what are you going to want to do? You're not going to make a fight over it. Take another 3 boards because of the hate. I'm sure the Bluzhever Rebbe felt this, what a grubby rabbi. He's taking 6. So who does he think he is? All right, but I'm not him. He gave it and he moved on with his day. Sure enough, the Bluzhever Rebbe is sitting at his own Seder with whatever family member survived, and there is a knock on the door. And sure enough, he opens the door, and there's the Hasidic master, his fellow colleague, one of the great Hasidic masters that survived. And the Bluzhever Rebbe says, can I help you? Would you like more matzah? So the Hasidic master goes to the Bluzhever Rebbe and says, tell me, my holy rabbi, how many boards of matzah do you have in your house? To which the Bluzhever Rebbe smirked and he says, I don't have any. I gave all my matzahs away to all the needy Jews. And the Hasidic master took out 3. Says, that's why I took 6. So I can make sure that you have 3, because I knew you have such a big heart, you wouldn't take any matzah for yourself. Take the 3 and have a matzah experience, just like all the people you help. My blessing to all of us is that we bring so many things to the Seder, but the most important thing we have to bring to every Seder and every day of life is this fearless commitment to every other Jew, that I'd rather have my first Pesach out of the Holocaust and have no matzah, so another Jew can have 3 boards of matzah. That's the greatness of Am Yisrael. Hashem should bless us, that we should come together, not virtually, but physically. I'm having an itch. I need to hug someone. I need to give a kid a lollipop, and I'm going nuts here. But Hashem wants us to have a unique Pesach experience. I look forward to learning with you in the future, very soon. And everyone should have a great week, a Chag Sameach, and enjoy the next couple of weeks of this crazy time we're living in. And hopefully we can not only survive, but thrive during these crazy times. Everyone should have a good evening. All the best.